Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, FD for Sage5.tv, and today in this video, we want to talk about game theory, which is fundamental to cryptocurrency design, influencing everything from Bitcoin mining and Ethereum staking to blockchain competition and DeFi liquidity wars. But before I jump into this subject matter, guys, and explain to you what I think impacts you as an investor or player within this space, please know that what I'm going to share with you in this video is not financial advice. These are just my own opinions and my own understanding of what material is out there that we research, read, go through, and make our own assessment. This information is just for educational as well as entertainment purposes, and it's also not targeted at UK audiences for obvious reasons. Of course, we are trying to protect you just in case you end up losing your investments and your funds. That said, let's come back to game theory and how it shapes the crypto space. And we'll also be covering projects such as ADA's Cardano and its ADA token. You got Uniswap, you got Solana, Avalanche, and Polkadot. They are all going to be included in this video. So if you want to know more about what we think about how game theory is a play for the likes of Ethereum, Cardano, Polkadot, and Bitcoin, you're on the right channel. Sit back and enjoy. Now, game theory is a branch of mathematics that analyzes strategic interactions between rational decision makers. For those who don't know what game theory is, but I'm sure there are other smart guys out there who know what game theory is, and they're most likely going to put it better than I'm trying in this video. Game theory is widely applied in economics, politics, and cryptocurrencies to understand incentives, cooperation, and competition within decentralized networks. Cryptocurrencies operate in an open, permissionless, and decentralized environment where participants such as miners, stakers, developers, and users must act in their best interest while maintaining the system stability. Game theory ensures that these systems remain secure and functional despite the lack of a central authority. So because they are looking after their own interest, that also means they'll be looking after the interests of the whole. But the design, the game theory need to be spot on, otherwise it will not work. End up having interference from external players. So to start us off, let's look at game theory in summary, of course, not in detail, at how game theory is like or is designed as far as Bitcoin is concerned. Let's start with the proof of work mining and the Nash equilibrium. Bitcoin miners compete to solve cryptographic puzzles to validate transactions and earn block rewards plus transaction fees. They're earning twice that. The Nash equilibrium states that rational miners should always follow the rules, that is, to mine honestly rather than attempt an attack. A 51% attack, which is what you need to take over the Bitcoin network, is extremely expensive. You need a lot of money to buy that. So if you want to know how much that will be, if Bitcoin is, say, sitting at a market cap of 2 trillion, you will need just over 1 trillion to attack Bitcoin if you got cash to do that. And there's no guarantee that your attack will succeed, but you may actually take over the network. That's how expensive it is. So who's got over 1 trillion of cash just lying around in order to attack Bitcoin? What will be your reward? That's the danger. If a miner attempts a double spend attack, trust in Bitcoin drops, making BTC worthless, which is equivalent to self-destruction. So who wants to run that risk? I suppose nobody. The other component of the game theory for Bitcoin centers around the Byzantine fault tolerance, or BFT. Bitcoin's blockchain is decentralized, meaning nodes must reach consensus despite some participants being malicious or faulty. And proof of work in this case ensures that even if some miners are dishonest or faulty, the majority will maintain the network, the integrity of the network. But how do you avoid the forking dilemmas? When competing ideas emerge, for example, Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash back in the day, users must choose which chain to support. If one mining pool gains excessive hash, this is another risk, isn't it? Mining pool centralization risks. If one mining pool gains excessive hash power, it might decide between following the rules or risking a network collapse, which is why it's always tricky when people are saying you want BlackRock to keep accumulating Bitcoin, because they can. It's a free market. They buy whatever amount of Bitcoin they want in Marco Saylor, keep accumulating. If the two of them, between ETFs and Marco Saylor, end up accumulating enough Bitcoin, and now with the US government, if they accumulate enough Bitcoin, they might end up taking the whole network. It's quite feasible, okay? 40 ETFs in the US, Marco Saylor, and the US government, between the three of them, do they have what it takes to accumulate 51%? They can. It's going to be expensive, but 1 trillion for them. They've got a government debt approaching 40 trillion. I think it'll be 40 trillion within the current decade anyway. So if they can do that, they can just find another 1 trillion lying behind the sofa or so and take over the Bitcoin network and do what they want with it. It's quite possible. So Bitcoin maxis, be careful what you wish for. Number goes up is not the only thing that is good for your own sake. You need other players within the space to play well and play fair. Sometimes that's not the case. So that was on Bitcoin. Is it feasible that it can be attacked? Of course, quite feasible. But the game theory there so far, it's been holding up. What about the game theory as far as Ethereum is concerned? Well, it is proof of stake, and in proof of stake, validators take Ethereum or ETH, participate in transaction validation decentralization. Rational actors behave honestly because slashing mechanisms penalize malicious behavior. What about the economic alignment then for these stakers? Well, stakers align the long-term interests of validators with Ethereum security. But within that, you also have the miner extractable value, which is acronymed MEV. MEV occurs when validators can reorder or censor transactions for extra profit, which happens front running and all that. Rational actors have incentives to exploit MEV, leading to competition between searchers. What about Ethereum's layer 2 game theory? How is that going and what is it like? Well, Ethereum's layer 2 solutions, for example, Optimism, Arbitrum, Scroll, and many others compete with each other using network effects. Users must decide whether to stay on Ethereum layer 1, which is secure and expensive, or use layer 2, which is cheap but fragmented liquidity and also centralized to an extent. That is on Ethereum. So the game theory on Ethereum, it's a bit of a mixed bag and there are some gray areas there. In other words, it's on the dodgy side compared to the game theory that is at play as far as Bitcoin is concerned. Next, let's look at game theory in Solana. This one will be fascinating. So Solana uses the proof of history and it offers block producer incentives. In Solana, validators or stakers decide transaction ordering similar to Ethereum, but the game theory issue here is that since Solana prioritizes speed, it is more susceptible to centralized validator dominance because it's just focusing on speed. We also have the issue of congestion and fairness dilemma. Solana's low fees mean spam attacks, denial of service can occur cheaply. Validators must decide whether to prioritize real transactions or accept spam for higher short-term rewards, which we have seen that has been the case on Solana. Some dodgy things going on because it's all about how much money people can extract from the ecosystem instead of focusing on what's important for the longevity and sustainability of the ecosystem. Talking of the likes of Meteora, Jupiter, things are still unclear on what part they played during the meme coin season on Solana, where retail investors were being front run like left, right, and center, and they lost a lot of money. And these guys were complicit with some of those actions. So that is yet to be uncovered, or people know they don't want to talk about it. Validators on Solana must also decide whether to prioritize real transactions or accept spam for higher short-term rewards. And then you move on to staking centralization risks. A few large players such as venture capitals, because it's one of the so-called VC chains, and those VCs control a large percentage of store staking power. If staking centralized too much power, validators may act against network decentralization, which you can't fight that because it's a fact, it's going to happen. And the fact that Solana has had at least two in recent times, where the two occasions where the blockchain was just paused to be rebooted, means this is not immutable and it's not decentralized. Regardless of what you want to call it, you can slap a label calling something decentralized, but the facts on the ground suggest otherwise. So that's on Solana. The next project we want to look at is Cardano and how game theory applies to Cardano. Then it uses the proof of stake consensus mechanism called Ouroboros. Let's look at the staking pools and Nash equilibrium for Cardano. Users delegate ADA to staking pools to validate blocks. Large pools gain more rewards in incentivizing centralization. That's on Cardano. The solution, Cardano uses a K parameter which reduces rewards as a staking pool grows beyond a certain size. So there is a mechanism there that makes sure that pools will not just keep growing and growing, never ending. They actually limit that, but it doesn't stop people from creating or owning multiple pools. One individual or an entity can control multiple pools. It's quite possible. And if many validators become dishonest, Cardano's protocol slashes their reward. So it's got a slashing mechanism that validators have to face if they ever misbehave. And rational validators act honestly to maintain their earning over time. Otherwise, if they misbehave, their earnings get slashed, which means their revenue is no longer reliable. They need consistency. So that is on Cardano. What about the game theory within the wider crypto altcoin market? That one is a mixed bag. It's a can of worms. Then the scale is wider. You got layer ones that are competing, such as Solana, Avalanche, Polkadot, Cardano, and so forth. Each of these layer one projects compete for developers and users. The more users and applications a chain has, the stronger it becomes, which then gives it an advantage when it comes to network effects, which is what Ethereum has been living on for quite a while. We also have pump and dump schemes within the crypto space where many altcoins engaging in Ponzi-like behavior, where early investors manipulate narratives to attract new buyers. But then everything starts as a pump and dump, isn't it? Bitcoin started as a meme to start with. Then it just evolved into something. We also have liquidity wars, DeFi and DEX competition. We've got DeFi protocols such as Uniswap, Aave, Cav, and so forth who will fight for liquidity. Protocols often issue liquidity mining incentives to attract users. So what is the game theoretic challenge here? Well, when rewards stop, users may withdraw liquidity, leading to a collapse in token price. This was evident during 2023 and 2024, where people were trying to mine tokens, especially from Ethereum layer 2s. They will lock their their liquidity or provide liquidity to be locked away. As soon as that event reaches its climax or it comes to an end, people just move away. There was so much of that, where a project overnight tripled, quadrupled its value locked, only for that value to be drained again when that activity or that program ends. So we've seen a lot of that. So what's my conclusion when it comes to how game theory shapes the cryptocurrencies? Well, for starters, you've got some game theory mechanics that are well designed, such as that of Bitcoin and Ethereum to an extent, and some leading layer ones, you're talking about Cardano and so forth. Then you've got some questionable ones like the Solana ones, and it's very hard to come to a point where you've got a blockchain that is fast, efficient, cheap, but also holds up to game theory properly, which means, is it safe enough? Are there going to be some acceptable levels of exploitation? We've seen it with the meme coin season on Solana. When you make a chain that cheap, it makes it easier for people to take risks because they're not going to lose that much. And you've got some protocols on Solana that have been, you could say, facilitating some of this exploitation because they want the volume, they want the numbers, they want the transaction fees in terms of revenue. Is that acceptable? I'm not sure about that. I don't think it should be accepted. It's not a feature, it is a bug that needs to be got rid of. So game theory is fundamental to cryptocurrency design, influencing everything from Bitcoin mining and Ethereum staking to blockchain competition and DeFi liquidity wars. For Bitcoin, for example, it uses proof of work and Nash equilibrium to secure the network. Ethereum uses proof of stake and slashing incentives to maintain validator honesty. Solana faces centralization risks but relies on validator competition. Cardano uses staking pool balancing mechanisms to enforce decentralization. Altcoins and DeFi, well, they compete in network effect battles, liquidity wars, and Ponzi-style incentives. When you are looking at this top-notch APR return, always ask, where is the value coming from? If you can't answer that, you are probably the value. They are extracting you, not the other way around. So crypto protocols must continuously refine their game theoretic mechanisms to ensure long-term survival, fair incentives, and robust security. Guys, what do you think about game theory within the crypto space today compared to, say, when Bitcoin was on its own, or we had a narrower field of altcoins and Bitcoin sitting at the top? What are your thoughts? I would like to know that. Let us know in the comment section, guys. Until the next one, this is FD for 65.tv signing out for now. Bye.